That was it. No warning, no hesitation. Just that sentence, sharp and deliberate, dropped into the middle of my son's perfect dinner like a knife through glass. The sound didn't echo, but it didn't have to. Every person at the table heard it, and every one of them decided not to. Claire didn't even look at me when she said it. My granddaughter, 23, radiant, cruel in that effortless way youth sometimes is, just twirled the stem of her wine glass, eyes fixed somewhere over my shoulder, already bored with the scene she'd caused. I raised my own glass, steady as a surgeon's hand. Yet still smarter than your father, I said quietly, my eyes never leaving Brian's face. He flinched. Not much. Just a small startled twitch at the corner of his mouth, but I saw it. The way guilt moves when it pretends to be calm. No one laughed. No one spoke. Marlene, my daughter-in-law, queen of calm cruelty, sipped her Chardonnay and studied the painting on the wall as if that was what we were really gathered to honor tonight. Her decor, not her family. No one defended me. Not my son. Not my granddaughter. Just silence, that familiar, polished kind of silence people use when pretending they're better than confrontation. I sat back in my chair, my napkin neat in my lap, my face composed the way women of my generation were trained to keep it. Still, pleasant, unbreakable. Inside, I could feel the heat rising, slow and contained like water about to boil. The roast chicken was going cold. The salad was wilting. The air smelled of rosemary and hypocrisy. I looked at them, really looked. Claire, smug and careless, her boyfriend sitting beside her looking like he'd rather evaporate than witness this. Brian, my son, at the head of the table, pretending his carving knife was a lifeline. And Marlene, every hair in place, every word measured, a woman who mastered the art of pretending kindness until it became a habit. I didn't leave. Not yet. People think the older you get, the smaller you feel. The truth is, the older you get, the more you notice. You see everything. Every eye roll, every sigh, every word people don't say because they think your hearing's gone or your memory's fading. But my hearing was fine. My memory sharper than ever. I could still remember the last time this family had laughed together, really laughed. Before Richard died. Before the air in rooms like this turned thin. That memory hurt, but it was still mine. I took a sip of wine. It was good French from the bottle I'd brought as a gift. The one Claire liked. I'd remember because I always do. 2 days ago, I tied a small ribbon around the neck of that bottle myself. In my kitchen that still smells faintly of lemon polish and loneliness. I'd imagined her smiling, maybe saying thank you. Foolish, I know. When Brian texted me, dinner's casual. 6 sharp. Nothing fancy. I'd stared at those words longer than I should have. No love you, no can't wait to see you, just logistical efficiency. The kind of message you send to a plumber. Now here I was, sitting in the house I helped them buy, being told to shut up because my age offended her. The thing about growing old isn't the gray hair or the joints that ache when it rains. It's realizing how invisible you've become to the people you made visible. I stood. Excuse me, I said softly. No one did. I walked down the hall to the powder room, my heels clicking like punctuation marks in the silence. Inside, I sat on the closed toilet lid and stared at the floor tiles. White, spotless, soulless, just like this house. I didn't cry. I don't cry in front of anyone anymore. Not since 1998. But I did breathe slow and deep, until the anger folded itself into something I could carry. I thought of Richard, my husband, gone 14 years. I touched the chain around my neck where his wedding ring still hung. You wouldn't have let them speak to me like that, would you? I whispered. Of course there was no answer. There never is. When I looked up, I saw my reflection in the mirror. My lipstick had faded, but my eyes hadn't. Still sharp. Still me. I smoothed my skirt, straightened my back and walked back to the dining room. No one asked if I was all right. So I lifted my glass again. To health, I said, my voice calm but deliberate. And to memory, some of us still have both. Then I drank. One long deliberate sip. The silence cracked for just a second. Marlene shifted in her chair. Brian coughed. Claire's hand trembled slightly as she lifted her fork. I smiled. Not because I'd won, there were no winners in this kind of family, but because I'd finally drawn blood from the indifference. That night, when I got home, I didn't turn on the lights right away. I just stood in my hallway, shoes still on, listening to the quiet. The clock in the kitchen ticked steadily. The refrigerator hummed. Reliable things. Faithful things. Unlike people. I hung up my coat. It still smelled faintly of Marlene's perfume, and sank into Richard's old armchair. The cushion still carried the faint shape of him, even after all these years. I stared at the coffee table. The crossword from 3 days ago was half finished. A pencil with bite marks beside it. I didn't remember biting it. Maybe it started after he died. Maybe it never stopped. The heater clanked to life, and I realized how cold the apartment had been. I pulled a blanket over my knees and just sat there, still dressed, staring at nothing. Dinner had lasted exactly 1 hour and 43 minutes. Long enough to confirm what I already knew. They didn't need me. They needed my approval to feel good about not needing me. I poured myself a small glass of the wine I'd brought. They hadn't opened it. Of course not. As the first sip burned my throat, I thought about all the times I'd opened my wallet, my home, my arms, believing it was love, not transaction. Believing that if I gave enough, they'd remember who I was. Mother. Widow. Woman. Betty. But they'd forgotten long ago. Maybe I'd helped them forget. I'd made myself useful instead of present. Quiet instead of honest. And that quiet had become the language they now spoke fluently. I picked up my pen and the small notebook I keep tucked under the couch cushion. It's where I write the things I can't say. On the first blank page I wrote one sentence. Starting tomorrow, I remember who I am. I set the notebook down beside the empty glass and turned off the lamp. For the first time in years, the darkness didn't feel like company. It felt like a beginning. Saturday morning came pale and quiet, the kind of light that doesn't ask for anything. It slid between my curtains, touching the table, the kettle, the framed photo of Richard on the shelf. He was smiling in that old picture, the half-smile he always wore when he thought I was being too serious. "Lighten up, Betty," he'd say. "The world's already heavy enough." I stared at that photo for a long time before moving. I didn't rush to make tea. Didn't rush at all. For the first time in years, I let the morning take its time with me. When I finally filled the kettle and set it on the stove, the whistle startled me, sharp and sudden. Like life reminding me it still had noise left. I poured my tea strong, no sugar, just the way I liked it. Sat at the table, felt the chill in the air, and thought about last night. About Claire's voice, that flat, careless tone. "Don't talk. You're old." How easily she'd said it. As if I hadn't held her when she was 3 and terrified of thunder. As if I hadn't spent nights sewing Halloween costumes, wrapping birthday gifts, covering for her father's broken promises. And Brian, my son, sitting there pretending not to hear, pretending it was easier that way. I taught hundreds of students in my life. Children who learned to respect, to think, to listen. And yet my own family, my blood, had forgotten the simplest thing. Respect isn't about titles or money. It's about presence. I looked around my small kitchen, the one with the uneven tiles Richard never got around to fixing, and saw every piece of my life reflected back at me. The chipped mug, the dented teapot, the folded napkins I kept reusing because they were still good enough. So was I. I pulled down the metal box from the top cupboard, the one with the old receipts and papers I hadn't opened in years. Dust had gathered around the latch. I brushed it off, opened the lid, and started to take everything out, one envelope at a time. I wasn't sure why at first. Maybe I just needed to remember the facts. Each paper carried a story. Claire's tuition. 4 years at St. Mary's. $42,000. Paid by check every semester. Brian's second mortgage. $68,500. Marlene's boutique investment. $15,000. I traced my own handwriting across each slip. Every number was a moment of faith. They need help. It's just for now. It's what family does. But no one had ever said thank you, not properly. Not really. I smiled, a small bitter kind of smile. Not angry. Just clear. I believed that generosity could glue people together. That love, if poured out enough, would eventually fill the cracks. But love doesn't work like plaster. It doesn't hold when only one person keeps patching the wall. I kept reading. Transfer receipts. Bank letters. Little handwritten notes. And then at the very bottom of the pile, a folded piece of paper I didn't recognize. My name written in Claire's hand. It was a letter. Short, written in blue ink that had begun to fade. "Grandma, thank you for always believing in me. I don't know how I would have made it without your help. I promise I'll make you proud." It was dated 2018. Before the eye rolls. Before the indifference. Before she learned that youth can make cruelty look like confidence. I ran my fingers over the words. They trembled, but not from weakness. There had been love once. Maybe that's why it hurt so much now, because I knew what it felt like when it was real. I folded the letter and slipped it back inside the envelope. For a while I just sat there, listening to the slow tick of the clock, the city outside, the quiet hum of my refrigerator, the small steady world I'd built that no one seemed to see. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Claire. "Hey, sorry if yesterday was awkward. I was tired. Hope you're okay." No punctuation. No heart. Just vague words tossed into the void, meant to check a box, not open a door. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to punish her. I just didn't have the energy to pretend anymore. By noon the doorbell rang. When I opened it, there stood Henry, my sister's boy. My great-nephew. The only one who ever visits without being asked. "Morning, Aunt B," he said, grinning. "You up for some errands?" His hair was a mess, his jacket dusted with sawdust. He smelled like work and honesty. "I'm always up," I said, grabbing my coat. He drove an old truck that rattled like a loyal dog. The kind that shouldn't still run but does because someone keeps believing in it. We stopped at the post office first. Then the pharmacy. Then the bakery with the blueberry danishes I love. "This one's on me," Henry said, waving off my wallet. "Got overtime this week." I almost cried. But instead I smiled, touched his arm and said, "Thank you, dear." He didn't make a big deal out of it. Just smiled back and carried the bag for me like it was nothing. On the drive home, he asked if I needed help fixing anything around the apartment. I almost said no. That's what I always say. No, I'm fine. No, I don't need anything. No, I can handle it. But something inside me stopped. "Actually," I said slowly, "there's a box of documents I need to sort through. Can you bring it down for me?" "Of course," he said. No questions. No judgment. Back home he fetched the box, set it gently on the kitchen table, and hugged me before leaving. "You okay, Aunt B?" he asked. "I will be," I said. And I meant it. After he left, I sat for a long time, staring at the documents spread before me. The numbers, the signatures, the silent proof of how much of myself I'd given away. I thought about Brian, about Marlene, about Claire. About the way they looked right through me at that table like I was part of the furniture. But I wasn't a chair. I was the foundation. And I was done being invisible. That night I opened my laptop. Searched for a local attorney. Someone who could help me make things clear. Not vengeful. Just clear. Her name was Lillian Pierce, mid-50s, kind face, firm eyes. The sort of woman who looked like she'd seen every kind of betrayal and still believed in order. I filled out the contact form. I'm 77. I have one son, one granddaughter. I'd like to restructure my will and protect my assets. Please contact me directly, not my family. I hit send. Then I called the bank. Asked to speak to someone about recurring transfers. A young man named Jonah answered. "I'd like to cancel all automatic payments connected to my family's accounts," I said. He hesitated. "All of them?" "Yes. Every single one." "All right, Mrs. Maxwell. I'll flag them now and confirm Monday." When I hung up, I sat there in the quiet again. But this time the silence felt different. Not empty. Free. I slept that night with the window cracked open. The cold air bit at my skin, but it made me feel alive, like something had been reset. Sunday morning came gray and slow. I stayed in bed until the light reached my pillow. When I finally rose, I dressed deliberately, soft sweater, pressed slacks. The gold bird brooch Richard gave me in '81. Then I walked to the florist down the street and bought myself a small bouquet. Pale yellow tulips. "For someone special?" the girl at the counter asked. "Yes," I said. "Someone very special." When I got home, I placed the flowers on the kitchen table beside the documents. Not for Richard. Not for Claire. For me. They say family dinners are where memories are made. For me, they were where clarity was born. Cold, uninvited, and permanent. Tomorrow was Monday. And I was ready. Monday arrived quiet and gray, the kind of day that doesn't announce itself. It just waits to see what you'll do. I woke early, before the alarm I didn't need. My body knew it was time. I moved through the apartment with purpose, each motion deliberate. Washed my face. Brushed my hair. Dressed in my gray slacks and navy blouse. Fastened the gold bird brooch that Richard gave me so long ago. It wasn't armor exactly, but close. By 8:45 I was standing outside the bank, folder in hand, gloves tucked under my arm. The sky hung low like it was waiting for me to make a decision. The bell above the door jingled when I walked in. It used to sound friendly. Now it felt like a bell marking time, the end of one version of me, the start of another. "Good morning, Mrs. Maxwell," said Jonah, the young man from the phone. He had kind eyes and the gentle nervousness of someone who still believed in doing things properly. "We have a private room ready for you." I nodded, following him past rows of cubicles and fake plants. Inside the small office, I set the manila folder on the table. "I've listed all recurring transfers I'd like to suspend," I said. "Effective immediately." He scanned the list. "These cover a lot." "I know." He hesitated, looking up at me. "Are you sure?" I met his eyes. "Yes, I'm quite sure." He didn't argue, just started typing. The quiet tap of the keyboard was like a rhythm I'd been waiting years to hear. He read each entry aloud, careful and respectful. Mortgage assistance, cancelled. Education fund for Claire, cancelled. Monthly deposit to Marlene's account, cancelled. With each confirmation I felt lighter. Not cruel, not triumphant. Just right. When he slid the final form toward me, my hands were steady. My name, Betty Maxwell, looked stronger than I remembered it. "We'll send confirmation by mail," Jonah said, rising. "And I'll make sure no one but you has access moving forward." "Thank you," I said. He hesitated at the door. "You know, my grandmother did something similar once. Everyone thought she was crazy. Turned out she just wanted peace." I smiled. Then she wasn't crazy at all. Outside, the air felt sharper, like it had been waiting for me to step into it. 2 blocks away was the law office, Pierce and Dalton. Second floor above a dentist. The kind of place most people pass without noticing. The receptionist, a woman about my age, smiled politely. "Mrs. Maxwell? Right this way." Lillian Pierce stood when I entered. Mid-50s, short gray hair, black suit, no nonsense. Her handshake was firm. "Please sit. Tell me what you'd like to accomplish today." So I did. I told her about my son, my granddaughter, the years of quiet giving, the silence that had taken root where gratitude should have been. I told her I didn't want revenge, just clarity. Boundaries. Order. She listened without interrupting, her pen moving occasionally across the pad. When I finished, she leaned back, folding her hands. "Mrs. Maxwell," she said, "what you're describing isn't unusual. Too many people think love means surrendering control. Doesn't. It means respecting yourself enough to draw the line." "I suppose I'm just late to the lesson," I said. She smiled faintly. "Better late than never." We spent the next hour drafting changes, my will, trust accounts, power of attorney. Lillian explained everything in plain language, her tone neither rushed nor condescending. It felt safe. When she asked if I expected conflict, I told her the truth. I expect silence. But I'm used to that. "Silence can be powerful," she said. "Especially when it's chosen." By the time I left, I had a folder of documents and an appointment to return next week for signatures. I checked my phone outside. 2 missed calls from Brian. 1 from Marlene. A text from Claire. "Grandma, can we talk sometime this week?" I didn't answer. Let them feel what it's like to wait. At the grocery store I bought sharp cheddar, plums, and a small jar of wildflower honey, things I liked. No compromises, no substitutions for someone else's diet or allergies. Just mine. When I reached my building, the mailman was leaving. He tipped his hat. "Afternoon, Mrs. Maxwell." I nodded. "Afternoon, Frank." The mail was light. A few bills, a catalog, and 1 unmarked envelope. Claire's handwriting. No stamp. Hand-delivered. I held it in my hand for a long moment. Didn't open it. Not out of anger. Out of patience. Inside, I made a cup of tea, the good kind I save for guests I don't get anymore, and sat in Richard's armchair. The room was quiet except for the low hum of the heater and the faint whistle of wind outside. I thought about Richard again, how he'd roll his eyes when I worried about money or family arguments. "What they say doesn't matter," he told me once. What you let them keep saying does. I hadn't let Claire keep saying it. And that, I decided, was enough for now. 3 days passed before I touched the envelope again. Each morning I'd see it sitting on the table, simple, silent, waiting. Finally on Wednesday I opened it. Claire's handwriting. Careful. Controlled. I didn't mean what I said. I was being stupid. I know I hurt you. I don't know how to fix it, but I want to. Can we talk? No greeting. No love. No apology big enough to bridge the dinner table silence. But it was something. I folded it neatly, slid it into the drawer beside the coupons I never used. I wasn't ready to answer. Not yet. Instead I baked. Apricot tea cake. The kind my mother used to make. The one Richard always said smelled like Sundays. The kitchen filled with that warm, familiar scent. Butter. Sugar. Something golden. I hadn't baked since before he died. When it came out of the oven I cut one slice, poured a cup of tea and sat by the window. The first bite nearly made me cry. Not because it was perfect, but because it was mine. I used to bake for everyone else. For birthdays, holidays, thank yous that were rarely said. This one was for me. The phone rang that evening. A number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer. But something made me. Mrs. Maxwell? A calm professional voice. This is Jonah from the bank. I just wanted to confirm all transfers have been successfully suspended. Thank you, I said. And ma'am, if anyone calls asking about them, we won't disclose a thing without your written consent. Good, I said. That's how it should be. After I hung up, I let the quiet settle again. Not the lonely kind of quiet, the earned kind. I lit a small candle on the table and watched the flame flicker in the reflection of the window. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for someone to call. I was finally the one deciding when to answer. The knock came early Thursday morning. 3 short raps. Firm. Controlled. The kind of knock that announces authority before words do. I was in the kitchen pouring my first cup of tea when it sounded. I didn't hurry. Let them knock again. Mom? It's me. Brian. I closed my eyes, exhaled through my nose, and set the kettle down quietly. Of course it was him. He never called before showing up. He didn't ask, he arrived. Like a problem that assumed it was a solution. Mom, I know you're home. Can we please talk? I walked to the door, looked through the peephole. There he was, expensive coat, tired face, that uneasy mixture of irritation and guilt. Behind him, Marlene hovered by the car, her arms folded like she was watching a client, not a husband's mother. I opened the door just enough for the chain to catch. You could have called first, I said. He smiled, that nervous smile of his, the one that always used to work on me. I did. You didn't answer. Then maybe that was the answer. He blinked, unprepared for that. Can I come in? Just for a minute. I didn't answer right away. Then I unlatched the chain, opened the door wider and stepped aside. 10 minutes, I said. He came in, looking around as if the apartment might have changed overnight. Smells like cake, he said. I baked. He gave a short, incredulous laugh. You baked? You never bake anymore. I do now. He sat at the table, glancing at the documents still stacked neatly by the vase of tulips. His eyes lingered on the folders: bank, trust, legal. He didn't ask, but I saw the flicker of unease. So, I said, sitting across from him, what is it you'd like to talk about? He rubbed the back of his neck. Look, Mom, Claire feels terrible about what she said. She told me about the letter. Good. Then she's learned how to write again. He sighed. She's young. You know how 20-somethings are, they say stupid things. She didn't mean it. She said exactly what she meant, I replied. The problem is she thought she could say it without consequence. He frowned. You're taking this too personally. I let out a short, sharp laugh. My son, if someone tells you you're too old to speak at your own dinner table, how exactly should you take it? He looked at me for a long time, jaw tight. Mom, we just want things to go back to normal. I folded my hands on the table. Then define normal. Because if normal means me paying for your life while I sit quietly at the edge of it, that's done. He shifted, uncomfortable. What are you talking about? You know exactly what I'm talking about. I gestured toward the folders. The bank transfers. The tuition. The mortgage. The boutique loan. The endless handouts disguised as family. His face went pale. You canceled them. I did. Without telling us? I raised an eyebrow. You mean like how Claire insulted me? Or how you took money without ever paying it back? Or how Marlene forgot to call when I was in the hospital? That kind of not telling? He stared at me. You can't just. I can, I interrupted. And I did. For a moment he looked so much like a boy again. The same stunned face he used to make when Richard caught him lying about curfew. He leaned back, running his hands through his hair. You're angry. No, I said. I'm awake. Silence stretched between us, not cruel but deep. Marlene's voice came faintly from outside. Brian? Is everything all right? He ignored her. You're overreacting, he said, voice low. You've always been dramatic. I smiled. That's funny. I used to think I was patient. He pushed back from the table suddenly, pacing. Mom, this isn't how families work. You can't just cut people off because of one bad dinner. Oh, Brian, I said softly. It wasn't one dinner. It was 20 years. He froze. I stood slowly, smoothing my blouse. You may not see it now, but someday you will. There's a cost to forgetting the hands that built you, and I've paid enough of it. He looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. You've changed. I've remembered, I corrected. He stared at the folders again, then at the tulips. You saw a lawyer? Yes. Jesus, Mom, this is crazy. You're 77. And still capable of choosing where my money goes. He laughed bitterly. You think you're teaching us a lesson? No, I said. I'm teaching myself one. He opened his mouth again, but the words faltered. He glanced toward the door, exhaled hard and muttered, Fine. Have it your way. I intend to. When he left, he didn't slam the door. Just closed it with quiet precision like he was sealing something off. I waited until I heard the car start before I let my body relax. My hands trembled for the first time that morning, but not from fear. From release. That afternoon, I sat by the window with my tea and watched the light crawl across the street. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for breathing in my own peace. 3 p.m. The phone rang again. Marlene this time. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail, her voice sugar-coated and brittle. Betty, hi. Just wanted to say Brian might have come on too strong this morning. We're all just a little emotional. Let's maybe get lunch next week? My treat. Her treat. I laughed so hard I had to set my cup down. I didn't delete the message. I saved it. Proof that some people only say sorry when they feel the walls shift. Later, I wrote a note to myself in my notebook. Do not let guilt sound like love. Then I underlined it twice. The weekend came cold and sharp. On Saturday, I went for a walk to the park near the library where I used to work. The benches were damp from morning frost, but the air smelled clean, honest. I passed a group of teenagers skateboarding loud and alive. One nearly collided with me and shouted, Sorry, ma'am. Watch your step, I called back, smiling despite myself. There was a time when I'd have scolded them. Now I just admired the speed, the noise, the freedom. I'd spent too many years trimming myself down to be acceptable. On my way home, I stopped by the diner I hadn't visited in years. The waitress recognized me instantly. Mrs. Maxwell. Still taking your tea with lemon? Still and always. She poured it with a smile, and I sat at the counter, watching the world move by through the fogged glass. I thought of Claire, of that dinner, her sharp tongue, her letter. I thought of the first time she'd ever spoken in front of a crowd at her middle school recital. She'd been so nervous she could barely breathe. I was the one who whispered, You've got this, love. And now she was the one telling me to be silent. Life is a circle, yes, but some circles you have to break. When I got home, another letter waited in the mail slot. This one was typed. From Lillian's office. Appointment confirmation Tuesday 11 a.m. Below it, a note in her handwriting. Bring identification and any property titles you wish to protect. See you soon. L.P. I placed it beside the tulips. They were beginning to wilt, their heads drooping, graceful even in decay. Something about them made me think of my own reflection, softened maybe but still upright. That night I opened my window just a crack, letting the cold air in. Stung, but it was clean. I made one more entry in my notebook before bed. Tomorrow I start living by choice, not permission. Then I closed the cover, turned off the light, and slept without dreams. The morning of my appointment with Lillian arrived pale and cold. The kind of morning where everything feels sharper. The air, the light, even your own thoughts. I dressed carefully. Not to impress, not to soften, but to feel deliberate. Navy coat, gloves, brooch. The same bird-shaped pin Richard gave me all those years ago. Every time I touched it, I remembered who I used to be before I became everyone else's support beam. I stopped at the mirror before leaving. "You're not invisible," I whispered to my reflection. My voice didn't shake this time. Outside, the city moved slow. People wrapped in scarves, dogs pulling impatiently. The smell of bread from the corner bakery drifting into the cold. I walked one steady step after another. Past the bank, past the florist, straight to Lillian's office. Her assistant greeted me with a kind smile. "Good morning, Mrs. Maxwell. Lillian's expecting you." I nodded, clutching the folder tight against my chest. Lillian stood when I entered. She was wearing a gray suit, her hair pulled back, her glasses perched low on her nose. She looked like the kind of woman who could silence a room without raising her voice. I liked her immediately. "Mrs. Maxwell," she said warmly. "Please sit." I sat. She opened her notepad. "So, are we ready to make things official?" "Yes," I said. My voice came out firm. "I'm ready." For the next hour we went over everything: my savings, my apartment, the small life insurance policy, the accounts I'd opened for Brian and Claire. Lillian explained options, protections, consequences. She never once spoke down to me. Finally she leaned back. "Now before I draft this, I need to ask you something important," she said. "What do you want to happen? Not just with your money, with your life." The question hung between us. No one had asked me that in years. Not since Richard. I thought for a moment, then said quietly, "I want peace. And dignity. I want to know that the things I've built won't be wasted by people who treat love like entitlement." Lillian smiled slightly. "Then we'll make sure of it." We discussed a trust. She suggested setting it up so Claire could access part of it only under certain conditions: education, home ownership, charitable work. The rest could go to charity. A foundation for women in education. It was like breathing fresh air for the first time. When we finished, Lillian slid the documents toward me. "You're doing something brave," she said. "Bravery isn't new," I replied. "I just stopped using it." We shook hands. Hers was warm and strong. "I'll have the drafts ready by Friday," she said. I left the office lighter than I'd entered. Not happy, not exactly, but unburdened. As I stepped outside, my phone buzzed. A message from Claire. "Please, Grandma. Can we meet? Just coffee. I promise I'll listen." I stopped walking. My breath fogged in front of me. For a long time I just stared at the screen. Then I typed back, "Friday, 4 p.m. Corner Cafe." She responded within seconds. "Thank you. I'll be there." I slipped the phone into my coat pocket and kept walking. Friday came fast. The cafe was small and cozy, the kind of place where everything smelled like cinnamon and second chances. I chose a corner table. Ordered tea. Waited. Claire arrived 5 minutes late, as always. She looked beautiful, young, polished, her hair gleaming in the soft light. But her confidence wavered the moment she saw me. "Hi," she said quietly. "Hello, Claire." She sat down, eyes darting around like she was afraid of being seen. "Thanks for meeting me. I didn't think you would." "I almost didn't," I said. She nodded, biting her lip. I deserved that. The waitress came. Claire ordered a latte. Silence followed until it arrived. Finally she said, "I've been thinking about what I said that night. I was angry. I don't even know why. Maybe because you always make me feel." "Like what?" I asked. She looked down at her cup. "Like I owe you something." "You do," I said softly. "Respect." She flinched. "That's not what I meant." "I know. You meant money." Her eyes filled with tears. "No. I mean, I guess I just never thought of you as someone who needed anything. You were always strong. Always just there. For everyone. And that made it easier to forget I was a person," I said. She wiped her cheek. I know I've been awful. Yes, I said simply. You have. She winced. I'm sorry, Grandma. I believed her, but belief isn't the same as trust. We sat quietly for a while. The cafe buzzed around us, laughter, coffee grinders, spoons clinking against mugs. Finally, she said, Dad told me you're changing your will. I looked at her sharply. Did he? She nodded. He's worried. They both are. Good, I said. It'll give them something to talk about. That isn't me. She looked stunned. So it's true. Yes. It's my money, Claire. My choice. Her eyes filled again. You're really cutting us off? I sighed. I'm not cutting you off. I'm setting you free. From expectation. From dependence. You want to be an adult? Earn what you have. Don't inherit what you haven't respected. She looked at me for a long time, then whispered, You sound like Grandpa. That hit something deep. He would have liked that, I said softly. She reached across the table, hesitated, then touched my hand. Can I try again? Trying doesn't erase what's been said, I told her. But it's a start. We sat there until our cups went cold. When she finally left, she hugged me. Awkwardly, like someone learning a new language. Still, it was something. That night I called Henry. How's my favorite troublemaker? I asked when he answered. He laughed. Hey, Aunt B. You sound good. Like really good. I am, I said. Listen, I'm thinking of taking a short trip next week. The coast, maybe. I haven't seen the ocean in years. You serious? Completely. Hell yes, I'll drive you, he said. I smiled. I knew you'd say that. We left on Tuesday morning. The drive took 3 hours, long enough for the noise of my old life to fade behind us. The sea appeared suddenly vast and gray-blue, like something ancient that refused to be ignored. Henry found a small inn by the water. We checked in, dropped our bags, then walked along the sand. You ever just stop and listen to this? He asked, nodding at the waves. All my life, I said. I just forgot to hear it. We walked in silence for a while. Then he said, Aunt B, you ever think maybe you were too good to them? I smiled. Maybe. But being good isn't the mistake. Staying quiet was. He nodded, kicking a shell. You know, I think you're kind of badass. Don't tell your mother, I said, laughing. That evening we watched the sun drop into the ocean. The sky bleeding gold and violet. For the first time in years I felt no weight on my shoulders. When we returned to the inn, I found a voicemail from Brian. His voice was tight, controlled. Mom, I don't know what you think you're doing, but this is tearing the family apart. Call me. I listened twice, then deleted it. Because for once I wasn't the one tearing anything apart. I was the one letting it fall exactly as it should. Later that night, sitting on the balcony overlooking the sea, I took out my notebook and wrote, Letting go isn't cruelty. It's clarity. Then below it, I don't need them to change to forgive them. I just need to stop waiting for them to see me. I closed the notebook, listened to the ocean. It roared and whispered and reminded me of everything I'd forgotten. That life isn't over when people stop clapping. It's only over when you stop standing. And I was still standing. The morning after we returned from the coast, the apartment felt different, lighter somehow, as if the air itself had exhaled. The sunlight spilled across the floor in long, soft stripes, warming the wooden panels Richard once polished himself. I brewed tea. Strong. No sugar. It tasted clean, like the start of something that didn't have to be explained. My phone buzzed. 2 missed calls from Brian. 1 from Marlene. And a text from Claire. Dad's furious. Please call him. He doesn't understand what you're doing. I didn't reply. I didn't know explanations anymore. Instead, I put on my coat, tied my scarf, and went out. The air was crisp, almost sharp. Leaves chased each other across the sidewalk like children avoiding responsibility. I stopped at the post office, sent a small envelope to Lillian with the final signed papers inside. I'd made my decision and it was done. No more quiet financing of their lives. No more pretending my love could be measured in money. What I left behind would go partly to Claire, if she learned how to stand on her own, and partly to something that would outlive us all. A scholarship fund for women who needed second chances. The kind I'd once wished for myself. By the time I returned home, The answering machine light was blinking. I almost ignored it. Almost. Then I pressed play. Mom, Brian's voice began, brittle and shaking. I don't know what's gotten into you. You've always been generous, but this is cruel. You're punishing us for something Claire said. For one stupid comment. She's young. You should be the adult here. Please just call me back. There was a pause, then a quieter, almost breaking sound. You used to be my hero. Click. I stood still for a long time. The words didn't cut the way I expected them to. Because heroes don't exist to be worshipped. They exist to teach others how to survive without them. That evening there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Claire standing there, cheeks flushed from the cold, clutching something small and square in her hands. Can I come in? She asked softly. I hesitated, then stepped aside. She entered, looking around like the place held ghosts. Maybe it did. Maybe that was the point. I didn't tell them I was coming, she said quickly. Dad's angry. Mom's always angry. I smiled faintly. Some people mistake control for care. Claire looked down at her hands. She was holding a framed photo, the one of her as a little girl, missing a tooth, sitting on Richard's lap. You gave this to us years ago, she said. It's been in the hallway since forever. I thought you should have it. I took it carefully. The glass was cool against my fingers. Thank you, I said. We sat at the table. She fiddled with her sleeve, then finally blurted. Dad told me you set up a trust. That I can't touch anything until I'm 30, and even then, only if I meet certain conditions. That's right, I said evenly. Her face tightened. You really don't trust me? I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not the sharp, dismissive girl from that dinner, but a frightened young woman trying to understand consequences for the first time. It's not about trust, I said quietly. It's about growth. You'll have to earn what you want. Not because I'm punishing you, but because I believe you can. She blinked rapidly. I don't deserve that faith. No, I said softly. But you can. That's the difference. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Claire whispered, I don't know how to fix us. You don't have to fix it all at once, I said. You just have to stop breaking it. Her chin trembled. I was awful that night. Yes. I wish I could take it back. You can't, I said gently. But you can do better forward. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Can I come see you next week? If you mean it, yes. She reached across the table again. This time her hand didn't hesitate. I took it. It wasn't forgiveness. It was the start of something quieter, understanding. After she left, I stood by the window watching her car pull away, headlights glowing like two small promises in the dark. The framed photo sat on the table beside the candle I'd lit earlier. Picked it up. Richard's face looked the same, patient, proud. Claire's smile was gap-toothed and real. I could almost hear her laugh echoing through time. I whispered, She's learning, Richard. Slowly, but she's learning. The candle flickered as if in answer. A week later, I returned to Lillian's office to sign the final documents. She reviewed everything with me. Each clause, each line, each word that reclaimed a piece of my story. When we finished, she looked up. You've done something rare, Mrs. Maxwell. You've chosen yourself. I smiled. Took me 77 years, but I'm a quick learner. We laughed softly. Before leaving, I wrote one more stipulation. A handwritten note to be attached to my file, sealed with the will. It read, To those I love, you were never meant to owe me anything but kindness. If you find this after I'm gone, know that I didn't leave you out of my heart, only out of habit. Learn to give without losing yourself. Learn to love without keeping score. And when someone tells you you're too old or too small or too late, prove them wrong by living. Spring came late that year. The tulips I'd planted bloomed early, bright and defiant, pushing through the cold soil as if the earth itself had decided to be brave. Claire visited more often after that. Not out of guilt, but something better choice. She'd bring pastries from the cafe, help me with errands, tell me about her new job at a community center. She didn't ask for money. Not once. One afternoon we sat on the balcony watching the sunset. She said, Grandma, I used to think you were just lonely. I was, I said. But loneliness isn't the same as emptiness. She nodded. I think I'm starting to get that. We stayed there until the light turned gold and quiet. Months later, I got a letter in the mail, thick paper, formal handwriting. It was from the Scholarship Foundation. The first student had been chosen. Her name was Amelia, 19, studying education. The letter ended with a line that made my eyes sting. She says she wants to become a teacher, like the woman who made this gift possible. I held the paper to my chest, feeling something inside me settle. Not regret. Not pride. Just peace. That night I sat in Richard's armchair, notebook on my lap. The candle burned low. I wrote, "They'll remember me not as the woman who paid their bills, but as the woman who taught them to stand." I smiled, closed the notebook, turned off the light. The city hummed outside, quiet, endless, alive. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel old. I felt free.